So it was a foreclosure too, so it could have been fire and then.
Yes. Call to order the meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee for March 4th, 2024. Would the deputy clerk please take roll call?
Chairman Sipes,
Here.
Trustee Stromberg,
Here.
Trustee Bogus absent, Mr. Tricky,
Here.
Mayor Johnson,
Here.
the deputy clerk is present, the attorney is present.
We have a quorum. First on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the February 5th meeting. Do I have a motion and a second, please?
So be.
Second.
I have a motion for Mr. Tricky and a second by Trustee Stromberg. All in favor, say aye. Or is there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes have been approved. Next is ordinance 13-24, variance to allow a substantial improvement in the 100-year floodplain without complying with the flood protection requirements, 99 Queen Oaks Drive. I have a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Trustee Stromberg and a second by Mr. Tricky. We have staff report, and she will do staff report on 1324, 1424, 1524, and 1624.
Yeah, that's right. I'll
Thank you.
report on them all together. This property owner had inquired about replacing the previous structure on the property. This structure was too close to the front of the property, and it was on a lot without a principal structure, and it ended up that way after the Queen Oaks Road Drive was improved and dedicated as a public roadway. When he inquired about replacing the building, I explained to him how there are some zoning issues that would prohibit it, and it would have to be built to comply with our floodplain regulations. At that time, the property owner opted to just apply for a roof permit because the roof needed to be replaced on this structure. He asked if, while replacing the roof, he discovers that there are some rotten boards that need to be replaced, whether he could replace them. I explained to him that to some extent he may be able to, but if he ends up needing to do substantial repairs, he needs to let us know before he proceeds, because substantial improvements have to comply with current regulations just as if it's a new building. Just to make sure there's no miscommunication about this, I did add a condition to his roof permit to stress that this building could not be enlarged, relocated, demolished, or rebuilt in any way. However, we later discovered that the original building was basically entirely demolished and a new larger garage was under construction at that site without any building permits. Now the property owner has applied for these 4 variances in order to continue construction of this garage that does not comply with the flood protection requirements and our flood area development regulations. It is located on a lot that does not have a principal structure, which is not allowed. It is larger than our code allows, and it is right at the front property line rather than the required 30-foot front setback. Staff feels that it is not unreasonable to allow this garage on a lot where there is no home in this circumstance. And we also do not think it is unreasonable to allow this garage to be 64 square feet larger than our code allows. So we are recommending approval of the 2 variances, which are ordinances 1424 and 1524. However, this garage really should not be permitted right at the front of the property like it is. This leaves just a short driveway where vehicles parked there may obstruct access to the fire hydrant that's right next to the driveway. And it's just visually imposing being so close to the road. So we are recommending denial of the setback variance, which is ordinance 1624. As for the variance from flood protection requirements, you'll notice in the staff report that there are different standards than our usual findings of fact for other types of variances, because if we're going to not enforce our adopted floodplain regulations, there needs to be a real unusual circumstance or hardship to make us even consider letting somebody build something that is likely to sustain flood damage in the future according to the flood elevations depicted on the FEMA maps. If we start permitting things that may turn into flood insurance claims after the next flood event, we're risking having higher flood insurance rates for everybody village-wide. And we're jeopardizing even being eligible to apply for flood mitigation funding in the future. So staff stresses that it would be very unwise to approve new construction that is not flood protected, and we recommend denial for the variance from the flood protection requirements. And just to be clear, this is not a requirement. This is the requirement that the garage be built elevated high enough so that it doesn't have flood damage in the future. It's not about making sure that floodwater isn't obstructed or redirected onto neighboring properties. That's a requirement regardless before we can issue building permits for any new structures in the 100-year floodplain. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted consistent with the recommendations to recommend approval of the garage being on a lot without a principal structure and this garage being 1,064 square feet in size. They voted to not recommend approval of the variance from the flood protection requirements and to not recommend approval of the setback variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions or discussions?
And that the applicant is present.
Is the applicant present, would like to address the committee?
If you have questions, this is new for me, so.
Is there any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Seeing none. So we will vote on ordinance 13-24. It's already had a motion and a second. So would the deputy clerk please take a vote?
Trustee Stromberg,
Nay.
Mr. Tricky,
Nay.
Trustee Sipes,
Nay.
Mayor Johnson.
Nay.
4 nays.
So ordinance 13-24 will go to the March 18th board meeting with a negative recommendation. Next is ordinance 14-24, a variance to allow accessory structure where there is no principal structure, 99 Queen Oaks Drive. May I have a motion and a second?
So be.
Second.
A motion from Mr. Tricky, a second from trustee Stromberg. Any other discussions or questions on that ordinance? Seeing none, can we please take roll call?
Mr. Tricky,
Aye.
Chairman Sipes,
Aye.
Trustee Stromberg,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye.
4 ayes, no nays.
So ordinance 14-24 will go to the March 18th board meeting with a positive recommendation. Next is ordinance 15-24, a variance for accessory building size regulations, 99 Queen Oaks Drive. May I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion from trustee Stromberg, a second from Mr. Tricky. Any discussions on ordinance 15-24? Seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
Chairman Sipes,
Aye.
Trustee Stromberg,
Aye.
Mr. Tricky,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye.
4 ayes, no nays.
So ordinance 15-24 will go to the March 18th board meeting with a positive recommendation. Next is ordinance 16-24, a variance from setback requirements, 99 Queen Oaks Drive. May I have a motion and a second, please?
So
So
moved.
be.
Have a motion from trustee Stromberg, a second from Mr. Tricky. Any discussions, comments on 16-24? Seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
Trustee Stromberg,
No. Nay.
Mr. Tricky,
Nay.
Chairman Sipes,
Nay.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye.
4 nays, no ayes.
So ordinance 16-24 will go to the March 18th board meeting with a negative recommendation. Next is ordinance 17-24, a special use permit for self-storage in general industrial district 9949 North Alpine Road. May I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Stromberg, second by Mr. Tricky. Can we have staff report? And staff will be reporting on 17-24, 18-24, and 19-24. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you. This is a vacant lot at the far north end of Alpine Road, where Alpine runs east and west, just before Burden Road. And this applicant proposes a self-storage facility here. This facility would be comprised of 4 separate buildings, all oriented parallel to the roadway, one behind the other. The applicant would like these buildings to have a corrugated steel exterior, like you see on most mini storage buildings. However, he does propose applying a stone facade at the bottom of the front building where it faces Alpine Road. But because steel would be the primary exterior material, this could only be allowed with a variance from the industrial design standard for building materials. Also, our code requires self-storage facilities to be enclosed by solid fencing on the sides that do not abut roadways. However, the applicant would like to use chain link fencing. So he has applied for a special use permit to have self-storage in the general industrial district. And he has applied for these 2 variances from the design standards and from the solid fencing requirement. Staff recommends approval of the special use and both variances with conditions. We do feel that this use as proposed would not be a detriment to the surroundings. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted to recommend approval of the special use in both variances as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the
Any
applicant
questions?
is present.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or discussions? Would the applicant like to approach the committee?
Not necessarily, unless you have questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we will vote on the 17-24 special use permit for the self-storage. We already had a motion in a second. We have a vote, please.
Mr. Tricky,
Aye.
Chairman Sipes,
Aye.
Trustee Stromberg,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson,
Aye.
4 ayes, no nays.
Thank you. Ordinance 17-24 will go to the March 18th board meeting with a positive recommendation. Next is ordinance 18-24, variance from the building material industrial design standard 9949 North Alpine Road. May I have a motion and a second?
So be.
Second.
A motion from Mr. Tricky, a second from trustee Stromberg. Any discussions or questions? Seeing none, can we have a vote, please?
Chairman Sipes,
Aye.
Trustee Stromberg,
Aye.
Mr. Tricky,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson,
Aye.
4 ayes, no nays.
Thank you. Ordinance 18-24 will go to the March 18th board meeting with a positive recommendation. Next is ordinance 19-24, a variance from solid fencing requirement for self-storage use 9949 North Alpine Road. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Stromberg, second by Mr. Tricky. Any discussions on ordinance 19-24? Seeing none, would deputy clerk take vote, please?
Trustee Stromberg,
Aye.
Mr. Tricky,
Aye.
Chairman Sipes,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson,
Aye.
4 ayes, no nays.
Thank you. Ordinance 19-24 will go to the March 18th board meeting with a positive recommendation. Next is ordinance 20-24, adopt official zoning map for the village of Machesney Park. May I have a motion and a second?
So be.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tricky, second by trustee Stromberg. May I have a staff report, please?
Yep, every year our board needs to adopt our official zoning map. Last year, the board approved 2 zoning changes, and the maps in your packets show the zoning of all village parcels as of December 31st, 2023. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended adoption of this zoning map, and we're hoping for the committee's positive recommendation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion on ordinance 20-24? Seeing none, would the deputy clerk take vote, please?
Mr. Tricky,
Aye.
Chairman Sipes,
Aye.
Trustee Stromberg,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson,
Aye.
4 ayes, no nays.
Thank you. Ordinance 20-24 will go to the March 18th board meeting with a positive recommendation. Next are reports. Are there any reports? Seeing none, next is public comment. Would anyone in the audience like to address the committee for the good of the village? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from trustee Stromberg, a second from Mr. Tricky. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you. Okay.
What do you want?